So today we're gonna, in the next 55 minutes or so, you took an hour out of your day, so we all appreciate that. And it's a very important topic of business survival strategies, right? So the details of that is why human-centric approach to your business is the best practice. So you will hear from me, business advisor with Cultivate. Jamie Hubanoff is here, founder of Leadership Agency, and then Eden Spodek, founder and CEO of Spodek & Co., who put this whole webinar together for us today. So thank you to Eden and Alyssa and the whole staff there. Let's get started. Next slide. Thanks. So if you're on the call today, that you're probably one of these three professionals. So what we're going to be covering is for business owners with staff or are gearing up for staff, talent and HR professionals, and the marketing professionals who create the voice for your brand. The deliverables of what we're going to cover here in the next little bit is strategies to improve your recruiting process and ensure that you have the best team on the bus, your current culture and maximizing the results from your team and your company, and then your image in the digital world and how to communicate that and your brand and your culture accurately. So just to set some expectations, we have a lot of information to cover. So, and I know that I'm going to talk fast in my section. We only have 60 minutes between all three of us, and we do leave some space at the end so that you can ask some questions. But really, I want you to just grab three things from each of us that we're going to present. Have three action items that you can implement right away. We have all been on webinars before where you get super excited about something one of the presenters says, and then if you don't write it down, you go into your daily work and 3 days from now you'd be like, man, there was something I really wanted to do. So please make sure that you have a pen and paper handy, write some notes down. If you've got questions, again, we'll have that at the end. And just have the goal is to have three action items that you can walk away with, implement in your business, and then work on those going forward. So we will record the webinar as well, and we will share that with you in a follow-up email after we complete today. So a little bit about me. I am a business advisor. I'm an entrepreneur for over 20 years, started my first business. Similar to Eden, our career started when we were pregnant with our firstborn, and now they're in college. Mine is as well. So I started my business over 20 years ago, and I learned now that in previous, when I look back, I get bored easily, and I need to grow, and I need to have that challenge. So every couple of years, I would add a new location, or I'd acquire my competition, and would just really have to be challenging myself. And my goal was always to make the business operate without me because of my kids. I have a son a couple of years into the business too. And so I always had the company kind of running without me. And so I would always need that extra challenge and growth opportunity, stretching myself and my companies. So I have owned several different companies. Fast forward to a couple of years ago, I had an offer I couldn't refuse to sell my main company. And from there, I started helping the new owners and consulting, helping friends and colleagues with their businesses, and really found that it satisfies my passion of growing and in making sure that, I'm always challenging myself and learning other industries and just being part of 10 to 15 different companies all at the same time and growing and expanding. So that is what I do as a business advisor. Today, I'm going to specifically talk about culture. And a lot of people think culture is just an atmosphere, but it really is so much more than that. And it really directly affects the success of your company. So I'm going to go into that in detail. So first of all, let's talk about what culture really is. I know some people, if you say hey, what's the culture like at your company? They might be like, oh, we're super fun, we're relaxed, it's a great environment. And that's great, but that's not it. It's not just a feeling, or it's not that easy to describe your culture like that. it really is your company's personality. So if you think about a relationship, or if you talk about someone's personality, it's just not what they present on the outside, or it's just not like, oh, they're fun. There's so much more depth to it, to a person's personality. And that's really what it is for your company. It is all those pieces. So if you think about, could you describe yourself, your personality in one word of like, oh, I'm fun. And is that it? Is that all you are? No, there's so much more to it. So I want you to really frame your brain around your company's culture is more than just that we're fun or we're relaxed or we have a great time or it's stressful, right? There's company cultures that are also on the negative side. So just know that it is so much more than that. And I'm going to kind of peel that onion a little bit with you today. Culture also defines the way that your team works. So it's not just the environment, it also is how all the cogs in the wheel of the company work together. It's also how people act and collaborate with each other, right? So it's that interaction piece. It's your mission statement acted out. So a lot of companies have a mission statement. Not many companies, or I should say not all companies, actually act out their mission statement. If your culture is in line with your mission statement, it is that environment of acting out your statement. It is your values, your ethics, expectations, goals. Again, it's that whole piece, right? And then it's not just internally. I think a lot of people think company culture is, again, this feeling when you go to the office, like that's where the culture is. And Eden is really going to describe how externally the culture is also very important. So you'll see how that piece fits a little bit later too. So know that it's very encompassing, it's internal and external. Culture in crisis, well, we're talking about this especially today because obviously the world is in a pandemic and everyone is affected, whether you're a business owner, marketing professional, recruiting professional, everyone is affected. So culture in crisis, you have to, it becomes even more important because emotions are high. I don't care if you're that maybe isn't affected as much. Maybe you haven't had, reduction in sales, or you haven't had to do anything with your staff. It doesn't matter. Emotions are high. People are working from home. Their kids aren't interrupting them. There's family members that may be sick or just being scared of what's going to happen to the economy, right? So emotions are definitely on high alert right now. The other part of crisis is that decisions need to be made quickly. I mean, think about when this hit for the US, there wasn't time to like plan and be, oh, this is what we're going to do. And then this is what we're going to do when this happens. There was no A/B testing. There was no, best case, worst case scenario. It was like decisions were happening every day. And that was part of why emotions are high. And true colors, or colors if you're in the US, also come out. So it is where people, at high stress, it is definitely when people don't have time to put on anything fake. Like you get raw when you're in a crisis. Then if you're like Nova Scotia, who is in double crisis, all of these things are even more on high alert, right? So, and just to be transparent, when I say crisis, we are in one right now with this pandemic, but everything that all three of us are sharing with you today, again, I want you to really frame your brain that it's not just in COVID. This crisis can mean so many different things in your business that it could be just a hurricane, or if you're in California, it could be a mudslide, it could be a tornado, it could be some kind of thing that is just local to you and your community that wipes out your business. It wipes out your talent pool. It wipes out your customer base. Might be even something that doesn't affect you, but it affects your customers. Therefore, it affects you, right? So crisis is obvious to us right now with COVID, but there are so many other business interruptions that can happen, that everything that we're talking about today, and especially for your company culture, is so important to just frame around that. So there are 5 things that I say you must have and keep in mind in a company culture. So I'm going to run through this slide pretty quick, but then I'm going to slow it down into each one of these and talk in more detail. So again, it defines you internally and externally, and I'll go into depth on that. It lives or can kill your core values. It attracts and retains the right people on your team. It directly impacts your company's performance and makes your company more valuable. So let's go into number one. So it defines you internally and externally. I hit on this a little bit, but just to slow it down a little, it's really about how your employees feel, right? We know that, we talk about that. That's where most people stop when you talk about company culture. So this is very true. It is very much how your employees feel. It's also how your customers or your clients see. So Eden's also going to talk into that a little bit about your brand and how your culture can exude, and it is what other people see. So your customers see it, your customers and clients can feel it, and your vendors and families feel it too. And when I say that, it is because we know how positive things can spread, like a virus. Not that a virus is positive, but it can spread that fast, right? That if you do good things, people talk about it. We also know that negative things spread even faster. So if there is a bad, something that bad happens in your company, that's going to spread like a wildfire for sure. So that's where your customers, your vendors, the family members of your staff will feel things like your culture. So if it's a great culture, you will be the employer of choice, right? People will want to be there. You will want to have, your customers will be like, man, they treat us so well with customer service. They're going to want to buy from you. So that's where it's external and internal. Next. So it can live, or it can, it either lives your core values or it can kill it. So values, for those of you who may not know exactly what core values are or where they stand in the importance of a company, values are the guide your decision making. It's the sense of what's important and what's right. If you don't have core values for your company, or you're thinking like you want to write the core values, or you just want to recheck them and make sure that your core values in your company are aligned, you focus on the strengths. Core values aren't the things that you're weak at or that you're working on. It is the things that, like, when it comes to your company, you go like, man, we're really good at this. That's one of your core values, right? So it's short in nature, a value statement, very short in nature. It speaks to your audience. It's the feeling, it's the what they get, and then it engages the emotion. So if you were to say, like, our core values are these 4 things, your audience, your both from a recruiting standpoint and then also from a customer standpoint or prospect standpoint, they go like, oh, I totally get it. I understand what that company is all about. That's your core values. And you can see where if your culture is not aligned with what you're telling the world your core values are, that's where it can kill. It's like, they say this, but this is what we hear out in the community, or this is what we hear from their staff. Okay, so make sure those are, it's very critical to have those 2 aligned. Next. Jamie's going to go into more depth about retaining, attracting and retaining top quality staff. But obviously, in the culture standpoint of things, if you have a great culture, you know, I just mentioned it, you've heard of like, oh, they're an employer of choice, or they're a really reputable employer. Those people don't have to recruit as hard, right? Because people are knocking down their doors. Like, we have them in every community, and it's because of their culture. It's because of a lot of different things. So it helps if you have that great culture and you're exuding that to the outside world, it just helps find and retain your top talent. It also, from the business side of things, reduces your overall cost for recruiting and retaining. Versus some company who has a bad culture, they may have a higher turnover, and therefore they're recruiting more and then they're not retaining. So it even comes down to a business cost. Next. So culture also sets the performance stage, right? So it has a direct impact on the employee's performance. So this is where, if you're a culture of, man, it's super great, we're so relaxed, we have, you know, those cute little egg-shaped chairs in the corner and we get breaks all day, that's awesome, and that's wonderful. But you also need to have a company that is performing. So you can't have all of this staff over here just loving their jobs and have all this family flexibility and the company isn't performing. So that's where you really need to set a culture that it's a performance culture, which is working really hard and celebrating and also tackling challenges at the same time. That's when you have a performance culture. So again, increasing the value, this is the last of those 5 key components. The value of your company increases when your culture is in line. You can see how it affects the outside world. It affects your customers. It affects your staff, your ability to recruit. It affects your costs in recruiting. It affects your costs in getting new customers. And your team is performing high and they're happy. They have a nice work-life balance when you live out your culture and your company values. So then if you're looking to sell your company, or just have a higher value to it, all those things play into making your company more worthwhile. Okay. So for me, I'm going to challenge you, and this is where that paper comes in handy. I'm going to ask you to put down your company culture, whether you're a business owner on the call today, or if you're an employee or an executive. I want you to think about your company culture and write those 3 words down. And then I want you to break into the why, just like off the top of your head, what are the 3 words I would use to describe our company? And then break that down into why, like why did you come up with those? And talk about it to yourself if they align with the company's core values. Are they attracting and keeping great staff? Are your customers and clients ecstatic and singing your praises? If you're not the business owner and you're more of the HR professional or a marketing professional, this is where you can like do an internal exam or assessment of your company and share that with your leaders. Share with your leaders some of your ideas and that you were on this webinar today and say like, you know what, we talk about this, but I think we really need to enhance this or this because this is what our customers are feeling, or this is what our, from a recruiting standpoint, this is what we could do better. So this is my challenge to you, is to really dive deep into that and absorb everything that I just said really fastly, and really work with your team and your in your company to make sure that your culture is what you want it to be. Next slide. I have, you'll see at the end, as part of being on this webinar today, there are 2 big pieces of that culture that if you would like to sign up after the follow-up goes out. Performance culture, we have a whole workshop on that, and then the communicating vision, and I'm happy to do that of no charge to anyone who's interested, because there's some worksheets through that I can help you on, and also communicating your company's vision. So those are additional tools that I'm offering. And next, I'm going to hand it over to JB, and she's going to talk about the complexities of HR and recruiting during a crisis. Take it away, Jamie.
Great. Thanks, Tina. And a big welcome to everyone who's joined us. Like Tina had mentioned, our prediction, and based on who we know has joined us, there is a range of business owners to HR professionals to marketing professionals. So I'm really excited to share this information because I think that not only are the details relevant to people who are looking to make hires, but it could be relevant to you if you're looking for a new opportunity. So I'm really excited to share these details. A little bit about who I am. So I am the founder of the Leadership Agency, which is a recruitment agency that's focused exclusively in recruiting for startups and small businesses and high growth tech companies all throughout North America. So we have an office in Toronto, we have an office in New York, and we recruit for, like I said, high growth companies, anything from a seed round startup all the way to a pre-IPO type of organization. And some of the companies that we've recruited for are companies that we're all probably quite familiar with, like Touch Bistro, Ritual, StackAdapt, Venna, PagerDuty. And so what I want to be able to share is my insight on what the market is today, because there are a lot of changes. There are a lot of differences than at what the market was just 5 or 6 weeks ago when it comes to talent, and be able to share some tips that if you are looking to make hires during this time, or will want to be, in the short future, this still definitely applies to that. So I will now turn it over to the next slide. So Tina did a great job of really laying the foundation in terms of understanding what your culture is, but also how to communicate that, so that you create a common language that someone can understand. Because like Tina said, I think a lot of people deduce culture in ways that we can be really familiar with and measuring it. Like that company's really fun because they have a pool table, or they have kombucha on tap, or whatever it may be. And we are naturally inclined to be attracted to the things that we understand are fun. But really what will help an organization set themselves apart in terms of knowing their story and their culture is understanding the why. So why do you have a pool table, or fun work events, like whatever it may be? Because you care about employees' well-being, you care about the things that make them happy, you care about things that the team has expressed to you in terms of wanting extra beyond just great pay, great vacation, and a work-life balance that will suit their lifestyle, or access to great leadership. But really understanding the why and incorporating that into your story. So I'll give you an example. If you were to write a job description, or even like an offer letter, or knowing what tools to bring in terms of an interview, like if you want to be able to sell to the person who wants the job, you're competing for that talent. So the things that you want to incorporate into that message is really understanding the why. Because if you put 100 people in a room and you ask them, like, do you want to work for a company that has a pool table, is really fun, is really cool? Yeah, of course everyone's going to say yes. Like, those are the things that we all naturally are inclined to say yes to. Like, well, why not? But the connection is going to be made on the why. So really incorporating that into your story, and not shying away from that language when presenting the story to the marketplace, because knowing that that's where the meaningful connection will get made. And I think that this new talent market is going to be naturally inclined and being very curious about the why, more so than ever, because right now the probability of someone that you're connecting with about a job will likely be an active candidate. So this is where they will have the opportunity to really evaluate other competitors and other companies and other opportunities, more so than they would any other time. So really being able to make that meaningful connection immediately in the interview process, or in the selection or the identification process, is really important. Really, at this point, identifying what is going to help you when navigating talent versus experience, and I'll get into that, making sure that you know what your competitors are doing in sense of hiring, but not hiring from them any longer. So I will get into all of those points. So next slide. So finding your target audience. Now this can be very easy. If you are looking to hire somebody who is skill-based, for example, searchable, actionable skills, which are typically deemed as hard skills, so to speak. So if somebody has certain qualifications and certifications, or a certain education that's specialized, or whatever it may be, that's one thing. That actually makes everyone's lives a lot easier, because those are searchable skills. And right now, what we all have as talent and HR professionals, and we probably share, now and even in the short term, is going to be time. And it doesn't feel like we have time, because if you're working and you're recruiting, you're very busy, but you do have a different type of opportunity than you did a few weeks ago. And what you will also have is volume. So those are the two things that you are going to be working with as a talent professional, as a business owner. It's a bit of a misnomer right now that every job should be really easy to hire for because there's so many more people in the marketplace that are unemployed. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's easier. You have different choices and you have different opportunities. So one of the things I recommend is really identifying who the ideal person is. Because if you post a job, let's just use that as an example, you are likely going to get hundreds, if not thousands of people applying to that job. And if you haven't been able to identify what is an ideal candidate based on hard skills, if that's something that is applicable, or somebody who you're looking for that you don't even really know how to articulate what that is, whether it's years of experience or leadership level, whatever it may be, but really identifying what a top talent is or a top candidate is will be the first place you need to start. And really looking at the opportunity that you have, which is, like I said, time, because typically from when you post a job to when you make a hire, you're typically looking at about a 6-week window from when a job is posted to when you actually make an offer that's accepted. So right now, and then you've got a million other things to do in those 6 weeks beyond just that one job and that one hiring process. So right now you have a bit of an opportunity to get creative and experiment and look at two different types of profiles. One that is talent-based, someone who is raw potential, somebody who it isn't coming from your competitor, somebody who could potentially be with your company long-term, may have a longer ramp-up period, but is pure potential. The other profile is, like I said, hard skilled based, years of experience. That would be an experience-based hire. So this would be a great opportunity to identify the ideal profile and then compare the two against each other, which is called benchmarking. So next slide. This is going back to my earlier point and some of the things that Tina was able to connect on, is that really understanding your story the same way that if you're a founder or if you're working for a founder knows their story to their investors. So right now, there's two stories. And two opportunities. So the first story that you want to be able to extract information from is the story that the founders are telling their investors or potential investors. Things like what the vision is, what the mission is, what the growth rate is, what some of the margins are, some of the details around the numbers would be really helpful for potential leaders in your organization because they want to understand and make a meaningful connection to not only the things that are on the surface, but are on the back end of it, like the why. Why would someone want to invest in your company are the same reasons why a person would want to invest in your company by being an employee. So really incorporating that language. The other story that you want to be able to extract from is what you would tell your shareholders. Like, what are the details that someone who's currently a shareholder would want to know? Things that you're looking to invest in as a company, some of the changes you're looking to make to your product or to your growth strategy. It's all about being able to retain those shareholders and show them ROI. Those are some of the details that you can extract into your employee and talent pitch as well, because those are the things you want to start now thinking about as anyone who joins your company, potentially joins your company, or is just interested in your company. They are essentially both. They are investors and they are potential shareholders in your company. So really incorporating that message into your recruitment pitch or into your recruitment strategy will go a long way and will continue to build the impact of a meaningful connection. Next. This is one that I feel very passionately about because I know just from a personal experience how easy it is, so to speak, to want to recruit from your competitors. There's a whole other set of reasons as to why people make this decision to do so. I also know this from personal experience because I get asked all the time by my clients to recruit from their competitors. And my suggestion, whether we are recruiting in the new talent market and positioned, from Tina earlier, like in a crisis, like, you typically tend to lean towards or lean into what you know. know and what feels not easiest, but what feels the most common. And so, we're all searching for that normalcy, that routine, and the competitors are essentially exactly what that is. And so if the 80% of business to business brands have never been heard of. So if you put 100 people in a room and you ask them, what are the top 10 companies you want to work for? They are naturally going to be inclined to say things like Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, Amazon. They are going to leverage their consumer experience, brands that market to them, or their competitors. Now, if you flip it over and you ask 10 companies or put 100 companies in a room, you ask them, what are the top 10 companies you want me to recruit from for you? It'll be the same response: Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, Amazon. So this is an opportunity that we have, again, going back to time and volume, to start looking at other companies that you could potentially recruit from, other than just your competitors and than just consumer brands. Next slide. Okay, so now we're going to turn it over to Eden, who is the founder of Spodek & Co. And she's going to be talking a bit about how your brand will impact your customer loyalty now and, more importantly, in the future. So thank you. You're on mute.
I know, I just... Welcome, everyone. It's so great seeing so many of you here, both incognito and live. And thanks, Tina and Jamie, for your presentations. They were really invaluable, even, for me as a business owner who deals with those issues every day. Even though I'm speaking here, they're entirely relevant as well. And I hope that everyone else here is finding today's session incredibly valuable. Thank you very much for being here. I'm going to take a little bit of a different turn. I'll tell you a bit about Spodek & Co in a minute in terms of defining the brand today, because we're going to be looking more at case studies and taking some scenarios that happened during COVID-19 that we're experiencing currently as we speak, and how it can be applied to any type of crisis situation and take some other learnings from the past as well. So as Jamie mentioned, I'm founder and CEO of Spodek & Co. We are a digital marketing communications firm, and we all run virtually. We all work from home. So on the one hand, we have systems in place and we're used to doing this. On the other hand, it feels differently for all of us as well. And it is a very strange time. And I just, want to check in with everybody and make sure everybody's feeling, well today. And everyone looks great on screen. So that's great. Next slide, please. So I want to talk today about how your business is going to be remembered. In this case, how we conduct ourselves and our businesses during this time are going to long live past the period of the disease outbreak. And you can substitute disease outbreak for any other terms during an issue or crisis. It's how you act. It's how, yesterday I was participating in a webinar that was being hosted by the company Tina's with and Cultivate Advisors. And this is something we were talking about. And I talked about, wanting to live our values and being able to act those values out now, as opposed to just talking about them. Really show people what you're about. And, as somebody who runs an agency, it's also helping us decide who we want to work with. It really helps us see the value of the businesses that we want to be associated with as well. Next slide, please. So COVID-19, as we know, has been a really trying time for everybody, both personally and professionally, at least for many of us, probably most of us. And this quote from Mark Cuban really resonated with me. And it's, to me, it's the most important thing that we should be concerning ourselves with when we're talking about our brand culture, our brand values, and our reputation and how it's perceived online and off. So excuse the smug photo of him. It looks like he's at the basketball court, but I didn't want to take a suit kind of photo. And that's the types of options that I had if I was going to take a photo of him that I had permission to use somewhat. So how companies respond is going to define their brand for decades. If you rushed in and someone got sick, you were that company. If you didn't take care of your employees or stakeholders and put them first, you were that company. So just think about this. And his quote has been making the rounds all over the place. So I saw it early on. I followed him on LinkedIn. I was really impressed by it and it stuck with me. And I'm seeing it popping up all over now. Next. Yeah. So in terms of brand management crisis communications, a public message from an unhappy client or customer can have extreme consequences for brands and businesses, regardless of the person's online following or clout. Not to be confused with clout, the platform that was used to be quite popular in terms of measuring a person's influence online. Next slide, please. Okay, so consider the case of Kryptonite bike locks. Now this goes back 16 years to 2004, before most people even knew what social media was. Chris Brennan, who was an avid cyclist and a bike forums user, posted on bike forums, they're worthless, he added. I don't trust them anymore. Why not? He was able to pick a lock with a Bic pen, and then he went and talked about it. There was a blog post, I believe, written by him where he had something like 5 followers, and yet this, post in a forum and his blog post, whatever, made the rounds so much that eventually this claim made the front page of the New York Times. And what was the impact of that? The impact was that a 50-year-old bike lock design was rendered useless. The ramifications for Kryptonite were over the roof. They went from rapidly from an issue to a crisis, and they had to deal with it, all because of somebody in the early days who didn't have a big following. Next slide, please. Sorry. So, your brand new lock isn't safe. Next. Here's somebody on a YouTube video from, I just searched Kryptonite lock Bic pen, and there's tons of videos. This one from 2008 has almost 1 million views. It's one of hundreds. And this is 4 years after the post was published by Chris Brennan. And there are still, as of recently as 2018, still people posting videos about this. And there are recent comments. So we're looking at almost, 14 years later, 14 to 16 years ago, this is still an issue that is haunting Kryptonite to a certain extent. But we're going to get in it next to how they dealt with it. So how did they respond? Well, they rushed a more secure bike lock design to market and shared the details on how customers could upgrade. And they covered the cost. They didn't expect their customers to do that. Next. Next, we're going to go on to talk about something that, it hits really close to home. Full disclosure, David Spodek, or Dave as I call him, is my husband. And I'm not sharing this case study with you because he's my husband, but it was impactful. And some of you who, at least those who live in the province of Ontario and the city of Toronto, are aware of some changes that went on as a result of this. So let's talk about it. This happened in early March, on March 25th. It was one simple tweet. Dave doesn't have a big following. He's not active on Twitter. This is 2020, and yet somebody without a big following, as we talked about clout earlier, was able to get his tweet out in front of eyeballs of people who mattered. He tagged the right people. He tagged the city of Toronto. He tagged the Toronto Star, so there's media. He tagged the mayor. He then did a retweet of this tweet and tagged some news stations like CP24 and CTV. Full disclosure again, not that they're following him, but he does work for Bell Media, who owns those media stations. But he also tagged all kinds of, City TV, etc. And what happened? People started seeing this online. People started tweeting it and retweeting it. I went and reshared it on my feeds. I tagged some other places and put it on Instagram as well. And then I had friends of mine in marketing and communication saying, wow, we see this happening and it's definitely because of Dave. And I was saying, he doesn't believe it, but I do. And what happened was the Ontario government rushed to change legislation because they had been looking at price gouging And we're hoping to bring some legislation out. I don't think, from what I understand, and a little birdie had told me that this tweet went across her desk and asked if he was my husband, and she works for the government, and said that it really expedited the legislation around price gouging. And the Ontario government rushed that legislation, and now those of us in this province know that there are severe fines for any company's price gouging, and particularly in a crisis. So, you know, a container of Lysol wipes that normally sells for around $3 was Pusateri thought they were being a good citizen, charging $29.99. This was all over the news at question period. The premier was asked about it, and so on. So, and big public shaming for them. So let's check the next slide. So before we talk about what Pusateri did, let's talk a bit about what happened in terms of influence. So in terms of what influence is, when developing an issues management policy for your business, and all of you should have it, even if you think you're, you know, a solopreneur, you really need to look at how you're going to handle an issue. And an issue, basically, if we look at the Kryptonite situation, is where talk started bubbling up online. Where it got to a crisis is when it hit the media. The mainstream media and places like the cover of the New York Times carried the story. So, you know, how do we think about a social media user's clout? We used to think about it long after the Kryptonite story as, what's the size of somebody's following? What are those vanity metrics? You know, how many people are engaging with your content? But you know, the message here is it's really important not to discount the reach of a simple single tweet. Even if that tweeter has a small following with very little engagement, they may be able to get their tweet in front of the right eyeballs. They tagged the right people at the right time, and it did have a big impact on both the brand and influencing important decisions that affect many of us. Next slide, please. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. So actions matter. Pusateri's issued a statement claiming that the signs that, at least in the location nearest to us, was nothing more than an oversight. Yet they had a sign that they were selling Lysol wipes, not only at the display that was in the photo in the tweet, but also at every cash register, and every one of them said $29.99. And so at least all their cashiers were seeing it too. And the display that you saw was right before you got to the cash as well. It was in a quite prominent spot. They said that it was an oversight due to the undue stresses of operating during COVID-19. Their statement wasn't well received online, and to many it seemed insincere. There was a lot of chatter. In fact, a few days later, I even posted on my Instagram and Facebook accounts that, you know, times were tough, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. And my post about that I got raked over for the coals a bit. A lot of people said, we don't care, we're never going there again. Pusateri's apology, you know, would have gone much further had they made a charitable donation to a COVID relief charity to show their sincerity. And I have to say, I don't disagree with them at all, but I also feel bad for any small business owners losing business at such a difficult time. So there are three really important words that are really important in social media. And I'm sorry, I have to let my dog out, so I apologize. And that is either I'm sorry if you're a solopreneur, or we are sorry as a bigger business. And it has to really be credible and come across as sincere to your clients and your customers. It's not enough to say I'm sorry and not act in a way that people see that term has a lot of meaning to it. Okay. And Pusateri did, you know, there are a lot of people who say they won't go there anymore. I can tell you, we are definitely looking for the types of things that we purchase there. We have found a lot of alternatives, primarily in companies that have pivoted, even if only temporarily during this time. Yeah, so can we please, next slide, please, sorry. So think about how can you be helpful and useful to your customers? and clients. I know some of, there's been lots of small businesses that I've been, that I always tend to support. And some of them have just really shone in terms of how helpful they are and how useful they are to their customers, whether it has to do with what your core offerings were before mid-March and what they've changed to, or what you can do with your core offerings to adjust and adapt in this current environment. Next slide, please. Okay, whoops, can we go next slide? Okay, so in terms of the brands currently making a positive impact, there are many. So we have Canada Goose on the far left has switched to making medical gear for healthcare workers. Bauer made medical face shields. We see a distiller took their gin company and they're making hand sanitizer and designer bottles, and we're seeing a lot of that. We've also seen a lot of corporations stepping up to contribute money or products to different grassroots organizations for COVID relief, such as conquercovid.ca. And there's some big names there, and these are just some of the sponsors that they've had associating with them and really helping out. Shopify actually gets a major mention because the founder and his wife of Shopify donated $1 million right from the start. So we can go on. Here's some other ways, you don't necessarily have to have a big wallet to have a heart during these days. And I know we're going to talk about big brands. Right now, we're still talking about them, but look at some of the things they did to make their customers feel good. How many people don't love IKEA meatballs? So IKEA came out with, in the same fashion as their branded instructions for putting together a desk or a bookcase or whatever else you buy from them, how to make their IKEA meatballs at home. And it's all over social media on their channels. And DoubleTree, the hotel chain that is known for their chocolate chip cookie recipe, has released that as well. And the picture to the right is from the Washington Post. So, and I think both IKEA and DoubleTree made it there. The picture in the middle is actually a Canadian example. You see 3 smaller businesses there, Generate Cakes, Birds and Beets, and Robin's Cookies, and Flour and Flour. They don't normally advertise on primetime ad spots on mainstream media and television or radio, but Craft Canada decided to give up their airtime to these small businesses to help and support them. Like, how amazing is that? Yeah, so one more quick, we'll go through quick slides. It's really important as entrepreneurs to and business owners to think about how you can use this time as an opportunity to give back and support our communities the best ways we know how. Remember to be helpful and be useful. Next, please. Okay, whoops. I was going to talk about some small businesses if they have, but if you can think about that, I want to give a special shout out, and I know she's on the line, to Maya from Verb, who's worked very hard and effortlessly, and I think sets a really high standard for how a small business can be adapting in this environment. So Maya owns a hair salon in the neighborhood. Immediately, she started doing contactless deliveries of product in the store for people, and has been doing that, and even gave me a free gift. I'm not going to go into detail for it the first time, because now she's much busier and bigger, because she's now offering free 15-minute color consultations and contactless delivery of color plus instructions for those of us who had to color our roots. I wasn't even going to do my roots until I saw that she was doing this. And for clients, she's also offering a 15-minute, up to a 60-minute hair cutting demonstration with a model head and different hair length wigs, so that if you have a family member at home who needs a haircut, she'll help to guide you through. So big shout out to her. Thanks everybody for being here today. Yes. Oh, so Tina wants to know, Maya, if you can shift that offer to Wisconsin as well.
The roots are, yeah.
Yes. And we're going to open up to questions. As you can see, the 3 of us are all going to offer a 30-minute consultation. We'll be emailing you details with our contact information as well, and a copy of this deck. And Alyssa, great. So now, I think we're going to unmute people, and or you can ask your questions in the chat, and please ask any questions that you have here.
And don't forget our original of like write down 3 things that you took away today that you can go implement in your life or in your business, so that everything that you learned today doesn't go outside of the brain after you go back to real life in 2 minutes.
Any questions or comments?
No direct questions. Just wanted to thank you all for running this session. It was a nice, nice message. I think it was a very relevant message, that how much the human relationship is the most important thing right now. And hopefully all the companies that are learning today, their strategies on how to keep the relationships going with clients or just with their own brand, that they'll continue it once this is over and once we're all back to whatever the new normal work will be. So really relevant message, and thank you.
Very good point. It's not just through crisis, it is ongoing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Need for those kind words. Much appreciated. I recognized your voice, although I can't see on the screen. It was you.
Oh, you can't.
No, because I have the pictures turned out so that I could do my thing.
Thank you. Thank you.
How's everybody? Any other? Whoops. I'm trying to send a message to everybody. So anyway, I just wanted to say thanks, everyone. We really appreciate your kind feedback as well. There's lots going on in the chat. We're all sending you lots of love and light. Stay safe, stay well, and we're here for you. So please take us up on our offer. You know, you're welcome to share it with other people you know as well. And, you know, that's our way of helping to give back, or one of the ways that we're helping to give back. Thank you.
Thank you.